A world racked by cataclysmic storms, volcanic eruptions, and a sudden growth of mysterious stone that pushed an entire city into the sky. This is the world of Pokopia, centuries after the departure of humanity. A lone Ditto returned to the world to work alongside a Tangrowth, who has been here all on its own ever since it was just a Tangela, and we are here to solve the many mysteries. For it was not Lugia, Volcanion, nor any other legendary or mythical Pokemon who's the culprit, but rather a new, unnamed Pokemon that has yet to be revealed. And after completing the game myself, finding Mew, and solving the mysteries within this world, I am ready to solve Pokopia's apocalypse and prove who caused the demise of the entire planet. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and first and foremost, I love Pokopia for all that it is. It has brought about so many mysteries and a long-awaited apocalypse that was bound to happen within this world, but it didn't happen in the way that we expected it to, all while providing me, your personal lover of ecology, with the perfect opportunity to look through this and solve it himself. Now, I have countless deep dives connecting real ecology and science to Pokemon's world, and proving these connections have always existed, so of course no other YouTuber would be best to give you the answers you need about this entire apocalypse. Let's just start, though, at the very beginning, and as we work forward, I will bring you every answer you could ever ask as the mysteries are presented to us along the way. Waking up as a Ditto, we're immediately told we seem well rested, as the Ditto is searching around for someone or something that is missing. This is responded to with a Pokédex that shows us photos of where we lived, and the hand of Ditto's trainer petting it, before Ditto tries to mimic its shape and succeeds to some degree. More on that later. We appear behind someone we will soon learn to be Professor Tangrowth, who even exclaims that there's quite the haul today, showing that it's been scavenging for quite some time. Tangrowth is surprised to see a human before it, figures out we're just a Ditto, all before we pick up a Pokédex that only started working when we got close to it and picked it up, meaning that we look close enough to our trainer for it to register us as a user, a Pokédex holder, and activate, when Tangrowth initially thought it was completely busted. Now, I will say, you will see a lot of footage. I named my Ditto Karaticus after the Ditto partnered player in my Pokemon Star Signs campaign, just for note. Now, we are never really told how long Tangrowth has been on its own, but we know it's been an incredibly long time, as evidenced by journals we'll talk about soon enough that tell us of a Tangela and its trainer, or rather, professor. I kind of want to have fun with this also and give voices to the characters, so bear with me as we go through it. But the grass and trees are withered and dry, and all those humans and Pokemon who once lived here, they're gone. But Tangrowth's question is, where have we been all this time? Before we can answer, we help out a Squirtle who is suffering without water, which leads me to two very important things that I'm revealing a little early on. One, not a single Pokemon in the entire game knows anything about what happened whatsoever, other than knowing that cataclysms occurred. Even Tangrowth, who we know has been around for an incredibly long time, has very little to no memory. And two, this all relates to an incredibly important app that was being developed towards the end of Earth's days called Life. This system, alongside the normal Pokemon PC, is one of 5 massive keys to our story, and all 5 of the keys are effectively our law to guide us to the truth of the matter, our 5 character stories of the past. As you work towards restoring habitats, you will see Pokemon come back, appearing in those rebuilt habitats. But instead of paraphrasing the information, I'm going to give you everything from the Life devlog entries. You'll find these lying around many lands we'll cover today, amongst 3 other types of entries and journals from our other stories and characters. Only one of these stories can be unlocked through restoring the lands and the Pokecenters by finding them inside. And I'm going to warn you now, this is arguably the most depressing Pokemon has canonically ever gotten, and not just in the superficial sense. This is the end of days, the death of a planet, and they do not pull any punches, and I love it for that. Diary number 1. The damage caused by recent meteorological anomalies is immense and dreadful. The news is continuously reporting on all manner of disasters affecting regions all over the world. There's even speculation that global food and energy resources may become insufficient if this continues. At university, I researched methods for creating comfortable environments for Pokemon and humans. There must be something I can do in this crisis. I've decided to do whatever I can, no matter how small. Therefore, I've begun creating homes for Pokemon who lost theirs due to natural disasters. I don't know how much this is helping the world at large, but the Pokemon at least seem to be grateful for the work I'm doing. I hope to continue my efforts until the meteorological anomalies calm down. Now, you're going to have a lot of knee-jerk reactions. Meteorological disasters? Well, of course, that relates to weather, not literal meteors. This could still, though, relate to many different Pokemon, from Rayquaza to Lugia to the Genie Quartet and many, many, many more. These Pokemon have shown the capacity to cause great cataclysms, but never have they been worldwide, nor do any of the entries say anything about these legendaries or even mythical Pokemon. Even when we look at Kyogre and Groudon, even though they say that they would destroy the world if they continued their fighting is very isolated within Hoenn until the events are over. And in fact, there are reasons we'll get into later that tells us that the cause is absolutely unknown, or at least unnamed, but can be traced back to a singular location. For now, your next question might be, when did all of this take place? Well, that's the vaguest part of it, but I'm going to claim this all began after Generation 9, after Paldea's events, meaning that this is our bridge between Gen 9 and Generation 10. This is proven through a number of different factors and entries that have been given to us in this game, and many other information from other generations. For starters, there are magazines that talk about the history of this area. It talks about our former champion no longer being here. It speaks on Koga leaving the gym as well, both meaning that this absolutely takes place after the second generation. Further than this, there's a note we can find talking about CDs and how the internet has effectively begun to collapse. CDs now making a revival, as it explains exactly the following. CDs are cool little gadgets used by our great-great-grandparents to listen to all their favorite music. Each CD can hold a little over 10 songs, making it easy to find a new favorite and listen to it over and over again. Makes me feel old, but to be entirely fair, CDs are absolutely a relative thing of the past even these days, especially as they put it into the context of no longer needing subscriptions as part of that journal or article. Once you buy a CD with songs on it, it's yours until it breaks, as they say. It admittedly gets a little bit weird though, considering TMs look like CDs, so you might guess the starting point of the apocalypse may be even further into the future than what we see in Paldea, but I'm going to make the hard stance that since they hold different types of data, they are only talking about CDs and not TMs, considering them vastly different rather than just saying TMs are CDs. Basically, this is all just one big squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares type situation, meaning CDs are obsolete, but TMs are not, and thus CDs are separately obsolete while TMs are not, if that makes sense. Now, we could Occam's razor this. The easiest and simplest answer is the correct answer, effectively, and considering we do see Generation 9 Pokemon in this game, and a TV schedule talking about a Fido dog contest, that would be a very easy connection. But we want to establish this further. The greatest sign of how much time has passed is that the building from Generation 1 is finally complete. Ironically, it still stands complete even within this destroyed world, and while I am jumping the gun a little bit, this is a building that exists within Bleak Beach, a further location within the game, and that we will talk about later, that is the ruined area of Vermillion City. The interview of the ages, as it's called, goes as follows. We managed to track down the renowned Kenzo, owner of the largest building in the area, for a special interview. My family has dreamed of constructing a building here for generations, said a tearful Kenzo, with Machamp at his side. Machamp had also helped with the construction. I also want you to know that the Machamp at his side may very well have been the very same Machamp we saw when we played through the very first generation. If it is, then we're looking at this Pokemon being able to live for an incredibly long time, but that is neither here nor there. Another entry does help us confirm things a little bit further with solid evidence. Alola, a new up-and-coming challenger, has been attracting a lot of attention at the Battle Royal Dome on Royale Avenue. The challenger's name is Gladion. Within a single day of his arrival, he and his type Null won a Master Rank match. Is there anyone out there who can defeat him? Keep your eyes on the Battle Royale Dome to find out. This will tell us that not only does this take place after the events in Alola for sure, even though it says type Nola, not Sil Valley, but that people are at least aware of the creature, not calling it a new Pokemon, but still calling Gladion a new up-and-coming challenger, likely related to when we first jumped into those challenges, or around that time period. We also have articles telling us of Acerola's acceptance of becoming an Elite Four member and Nanu turning it down, which is a very interesting detail. It kind of actually reflects his choice of when he didn't want to become a Kahuna, but he was forced to become a Kahuna anyway by one of the Tapus. But even further down the line, we get info on Bede. Gym Leader Spotlight Bede. Bede, gym leader of Bellenlay Stadium, has been busy ever since he inherited the role from Opal, the wizard. What's he been up to, you ask? Get a peek behind the scenes of a day in the life of the pink-clad fairy type using Bede in June's Ultra Elite edition of Gym Leader Monthly. Then, to follow, we get a hint about Red. Not just a few years into the future, but full-on decades. After decades of requesting interviews with a certain legendary trainer and former champion of the Kanto region, we finally managed to get an exclusive meeting. The photo he wordlessly showed us was a familiar and memorable sight. Himself as a smiling young boy surrounded by his Pokemon. To the editing department, FYI, this reporter is personally a huge fan of the former champion and could not stop crying after the interview. And that one hits me in the gut. The first time I read, the nostalgia kind of just took over and I did cry a little bit, I'm not gonna lie to you. But even Blue isn't left out of this one. Gym Leader Spotlight Blue. Blue's accomplishments are many, and you can't even begin to talk about the Viridian City Gym without mentioning his name. This edition of Gym Leader Monthly looks at how he managed to change a former Team Rocket hideout into a wildly popular gym. Ultimately, there is no definitive answer as per a time in years. Especially as I did not see anything about characters from Generation 9, but to me, it still just makes the most sense that this would occur after Paldea's main events, and the news just hasn't reached anywhere else yet, especially in articles. I want to continue moving forward with the next PokeLife entry. Like-minded individuals have been slowly joining my cause as I continue to create homes for Pokemon. I greatly appreciate the support those individuals provide, but we have all begun to grow tired as the meteorological anomalies and resulting natural disasters continue to worsen. We need more time, and we need more help. I've recently begun hearing rumors that there are plans to temporarily evacuate all of humanity into space. If these rumors are true, does that mean that all of our efforts have been in vain? My collaborators seem anxious as well. Perhaps they are of the same mind as I. First, this is where we begin to see a slip in our stories, hinting at a few other major characters. The professor who Tangrowth belonged to, a prolific hacker, a Team Rocket grunt, and our trainer. Their stories will intertwine as we move along, as they are all faced with disaster. These meteorological anomalies are not just some fantasy thing that only happens in Pokopia, by the way. And when they begin to happen in our world, as they have, then they continue to happen more and more often. Long story short, instead of me going on a huge rant, we're hitting new record high and low temperatures every year. Wisconsin in this past year, where I live, had reached temperatures as cold as parts of Antarctica. For clarity, it reached negative 56 degrees Fahrenheit in some locations, and if you use Celsius, this means we reached past the point of where Fahrenheit and Celsius match each other. We've had the record-shattering and fast-developing Super El Nino, which El Ninos in general are natural climate patterns characterized by the warming of ocean surface temperatures in the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. They occur every 2 to 7 years. It weakens trade winds, shifts global atmospheric circulation, and disrupts normal weather patterns, often bringing floods to some regions and droughts to others. Seems a little familiar, doesn't it? As especially we go along. And as these anomalies continue to grow stronger, more unpredictable, they disrupt the natural world. Sometimes they do stabilize things in the long term, but otherwise they become more dangerous until it's over, and they have the chance to set off other mass cataclysms, creating a chain effect. Earthquakes causing tsunamis or volcanic eruptions, lands being ripped apart, skies darkening and reducing our ability to grow food as the sun is blotted out, our inability to tell the difference between night and day, our circadian rhythm thrown out of whack, and the most insane part of it all is, these are all things that happen in Pokopia, and I am not even remotely over-exaggerating. At the very least, we can explain all of this scientifically and mathematically. Meanwhile, Pokemon has better scientific capabilities, and they still call it an absolute anomaly with no singular identifiable source, which makes me want to tie it to a Pokemon. But how about I give you more entries to really prove what I just said? Comfy Living Volume 866 states, more and more people are finding themselves low on sleep recently due to the rapid and unexpected changes in their environment. In this issue, we'll offer some ideas that can help to get your sleep back on track, including information on aromatherapy and hot baths. Better sleep at night starts with a more relaxing day. Meanwhile, we can also begin to look a little out of order to see Professor's Diary number 3, which states the following. Today, there was a gathering attended by Pokemon professors from every region. We had a surprising announcement in store. Increasingly intense weather abnormalities, and the calamities striking each region as a result show no sign of slowing down. At this rate, predictions suggest that we will no longer be able to obtain enough food and energy to continue living on this planet. And we learned that a plan was secretly in motion to evacuate all of humanity into space. It also seemed that, with a few exceptions, it will not be possible to bring Pokemon with us. Of course, some immediately raised their voices in protest, which is when we heard about the Pokemon Conservation Project. This is when everything becomes like the most heartbreaking to me. I don't imagine Pokemon. Instead, I imagine my own dogs and my cats, pets that others have, living beings being left behind with no idea as to what is actually happening, and it hurts. Of course, there is a massive nostalgia factor, and I really do love Pokemon, so of course, imagining myself in the shoes of these people and having to let go of my home and the living beings on it is incredibly painful. Now that I've brought up the professor, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the massive Tangrowth professor in the wide open area that has been bleached from the sun and the lack of water. Now, Professor Tangrowth guides us through the wastes, becoming our point of contact and #1 human enthusiast and database, even if it doesn't actually know or understand what a human party is, which is a little adorable. Like, please, just let me hug Professor Tangrowth. I'm happy they took a Pokemon that was often left unassuming and brought out its potential as something really, really fun, but there's something wild going on here. This Tangrowth belonged to the aforementioned professor, but it wasn't a Tangrowth before said professor left the planet. It was only ever a Tangela. Professor's Diary 1. My field survey on Cinnabar proved quite fruitful. I spoke with Pokemon professors from other regions and gained a number of insights from my own research. Many folks were very concerned about possible effects the recent weather disturbances may be having on Pokemon. On my way home, I found a young Tangela. He appeared injured and weak, so I used a potion to heal him. He seemed to take a liking to me and huddled along behind me. I wasn't sure what to do at first. I ended up bringing him home with me, figuring he might be a good playmate for my grandchild. Who is this professor? It's never revealed. There are many different speculations, with even Erica having a Tangela while also being a teacher, though more of a teacher of flower arranging in particular. We could tie it to Janine, who would have lived in Fuchsia, or even Koga, who had a Tangela in Pokemon Stadium. But none of these people are our professor. In fact, I have never been more confident that we know none of the names of any of our major characters. Not a single one of them will have existed in past generations. Now, I admit I mainly blame ZA for this idea, as we have been given many characters that are aware of each other and have a strong interwoven relationship amongst each other and people we have met, but we ourselves have not met in previous editions of the games. This is different from remakes, which will take characters like Shelly and transform them massively. This is its own canonical story within the world that is building on decades of storytelling. But I might even be willing to bet that with decades passing, that Red is potentially in his 50s or older, potentially being able to replace Professor Oak, who had a similar past, first becoming champion, then becoming a professor, but more on that later as that gets into speculation. Once again, I intend to move forward with the assumption that our human main characters are people we have never met before and will not meet until Generation 10 comes out. As a development standpoint, it is surprising to me that Gen 10 wouldn't be coming out this fall as per usual patterns, and instead we have this game, which seems to break some of their usual release cycle ideas, and obviously we've never had an apocalypse like this before happen. Though continuing on finally, Diary 2 from the Professor states, "My grandchild plays with Tangela a lot these days. They both seem to be having so much fun. Just watching them warms my heart. Tangela shows interest in any and all human activities. When I'm working on the computer, he stares intently at my screen with a curious expression. Trainers who come to visit me also play with Tangela, and Tangela seems intrigued by the items they use. He looks enthralled by things like Pokédexes and Pokeballs. Are all Tangela brimming with curiosity, or is this little one just special? Pokemon really are fascinating. There's always more to learn about them." This in particular gets into some very interesting details, because between what is in the past a Tangela, our Ditto, and many other Pokemon we will learn about as I continue, they all begin to take on more human-like roles, human goals and abilities. It's almost like they are evolving in their own traditional way. In canon, within the Kanalav library, we can read about how humans and Pokemon were once one, and effectively we can state humans evolved from some singular ancient ancestor that Pokemon would have had as well, theoretically. So with enough time and knowing Pokemon evolve at a much faster rate, could these Pokemon have been adapting similarly to what we would see in humanity? Now, of course, I can hear you, Mystery Dungeon fans. I don't ignore you, don't you worry. And admittedly, there are a lot of little nods towards Mystery Dungeon that would include the little homes you can make for Pokemon looking like the starting den. But other than this, you get no real direct confirmation, although we might be coming back to this idea a little bit later indirectly. Now, we already read Diary 3, but Diary 4 is when we see the human professor's story directly tie into our Poke life. It was decided that we will take part in the Pokemon Conservation Project. It's a plan to safely store all Pokemon on the planet in a massive computer system while humanity takes refuge in space. I can't be sure that such a thing is even possible, and being parted from our Pokemon will be terribly painful, but this may be the only way that people and Pokemon will be able to live together again someday. I was also asked to join a survey team after we moved to space, but I held off on responding. After humanity relocates, a small group will be sent back to the planet to survey the environment and do maintenance on the conservation system. But given my age, I don't know if I'll still be spry enough to be of much help. I think it's a task best left to the young. This is already telling us that this is something that will take years to see resolved, if not actually decades. And I know what I said in the intro, but we're building up to that. This could go as far as generations, though, of people living up in space before things calm down, with no talks of cryo chambers or anything else whatsoever. The reason they can't bring Pokemon is because they have to control population. They have to make sure that generations survive if necessary, but the population is sustained at the same time. This does lead me briefly back to the idea of our planet falling apart. In fact, our human population has been increasing at an increasing rate for so long that we're really due for a ceiling to get hit soon. The problem is, which seems really insensitive, and I apologize, but we are living longer and longer as well. So populations are held up, but food consumption as it increases is just not efficient enough. It is also being thrown away as incredible amounts of food waste. And even when it isn't food waste, then better transport lines still need to be made to reach starving mouths. Effectively, food, population, resources, places to stay, it's all falling apart, slowly but surely as more and more crises come to hand. But imagine every single mouth on Earth in one space, one location, trying to find comfort but needing to grow crops. You can't do this without limiting populations unless you want everyone to pass away. And that's not even talking about disease and general sickness. So yes, the Pokemon have to be left behind. They would likely grow irritable fast. Too many different species vying for space and food, being territorial, being defensive, being in an unfamiliar space that would cause their anxiety to grow higher and higher and cause them to fight more often until it puts everyone's lives at risk. This is genuinely the smartest decision they could make, even if it hurts, as it is also the hardest part of the project as part of making it a reality. So how does this happen? Well, that's when we get into the Hacker Diaries. Confessions from a Hacker, Entry 1. I doubt anyone will ever read this, but the memories of my experiences are too much to bear alone. So I've decided to confide in this diary. I'm a nameless hacker. I infiltrate the networks of huge corporations, steal their secrets, and sell them to their rivals. I already have more than enough money, but it's fun peering behind the scenes, so it's almost like a hobby for me. I donate all the money I don't use to things like Pokemon conservation groups. Ever since I was a kid, I've liked computers and Pokemon more than people. We're already beginning to see ties, hacking big organizations, donating to Pokemon conservation groups, but things take a turn when we look at confession number 2. It happened when I was hacking into a server in another region for fun, and stumbled on a system with excessively high security. Finding these sorts of things is always a thrill. It took a lot of effort, but once I breached it, all I could find was what seemed like trivial data about weather patterns. It was anticlimactic, but it made me think, why would someone put so much effort into hiding something like this? That nagged me. So I dove back in. It took a lot of work, but I learned how to make sense of the weather data. I was able to gather that a natural disaster had struck that region. Dozens of huge, repeated hurricanes. That's the only conclusion I could draw. But I'd never heard news about a disaster like that. A hidden disaster. Yet the only place I can think of, or rather places, would be Galar and Alola. We already know that Alola had their information leaked out. This is how Galar even got their hands on data they needed to create Silvally. But whether or not this hacker is the culprit is an entirely different question we don't get confirmation of. Meanwhile, with Galar, Chairman Rose always talked about how to save Galar they needed to revive Eternatus, power it into Eternamax, and replenish the Galar particles, something that in the games was often lackluster and agreed upon to be lackluster, though some things are becoming more and more common, such as information from the manga being used in newer games. For example, within Legends EA, we do get, spoiler alert, the death of AZ, which was already done in the manga long ago. In addition, the capturing of Xerneas and Yveltal was in the manga, and even now, as we look at Pokopia, we find a Team Rocket hideout in this first Wasteland location, a location we know is Fuchsia based on the layout and information we'll get directly later. This was also the home city of Koga, who was evil in the manga. Even later on, we would visit the sparkling Skylands. We would then find that there is a Team Rocket hideout directly under Sabrina's gym, once again being another evil character in the manga. Yet we do not see anything about this in our other location, being Viridian City, as evidenced by the SS and focus on electricity and lights that we find here. Though of course the SS and would have been the place to find any evidence if there was any left, as it was the target of Team Rocket and Lieutenant Surge was evil in the manga as well. A lot of coincidences that may just be references, but then we begin to wonder what could be made canon to the games as they are being released. And I think we might have an answer, because in the manga it turns out Chairman Rose was hiding something underneath it all, and when the numbers were crunched, a deeper and darker truth was uncovered. He was trying to imply that it wasn't the Galar 1,000 years from now that we needed to worry about, it was the present Galar, which was needed to be protected from the impending crisis. According to the simulations, it's estimated that 20 to 30 years from now, Galarian society will collapse. And a few hundred years further, humans and Pokemon will be destroyed. The destruction of Galar wouldn't start in 1,000 years, it would already be over. Line this up with Leon being identified as visiting Jacynth within Kalos and Legends EA, two places dealing with massive influxes of Pokemon energy and giant Pokemon going on rampages, and we begin to see a stronger and stronger picture of energy going rampant within the world of Pokemon, releasing too much. While the reasoning likely has changed, I guarantee that this idea of Galar and the world falling apart and needing a solution in the form of an energy crisis is the path Pokopia is taking. Further notes from the manga state, no matter how many times we ran the calculations, within 10 years, we would have started to run out of resources like water and electricity. Transportation and industry would no longer be operational. All it would take is 10 years. And if only a band-aid solution was given, those 10 years could be covered up and put off for another 10 years, maybe 20 or 30, but if a real answer is never given, then this doom would be inevitable in the march of time towards a whimper of a demise. Moving forward with more hacker confessions, we have number 3. If a disaster of that scale had really happened, surely it would have received both local and global attention. With that thought, I remembered a foundation active in that region. They were known for their passion for Pokemon conservation efforts. I had even donated to them. I thought that an organization of that scale might be able to influence media so that no news of the disaster leaked outside the region. I spent countless days infiltrating the Foundation's servers, looking into any data I could lay my hands on. And sure enough, it gradually became clear that they were involved. I finally fell asleep after repeated all-nighters, and when I woke up, I was surrounded by members of the Foundation. And I want to make this very clear. The wording and sentence structure is that the Foundation is active in that region, not that the Foundation belongs to or is hosted or founded within that region. And we all know what foundation we're talking about here. It's the Aether Foundation, baby! And it makes me so excited. I love Lola and the Aether Foundation so much. Who would have guessed? A place whose entire original purpose was to advance technology with the intent of creating habitats for Pokemon as an amazing Pokemon conservation. Of course, they would spread their reach after the events within Alola to other regions, monitor and understand Pokemon, build better habitats, understand Pokemon in nature itself. It is, after all, what you're supposed to do as a conservationist or when you study nature in general, speaking from experience. And so they were first on the scene, and the Aether Foundation was working to cover things up. Clear cut then, we move on to Confession 4. Apparently I'd left traces when I hacked the servers. That was enough for them to track me down. The people from the Foundation were surprisingly polite, and they explained what was happening in detail. I have no intention of writing it all here. The important thing is that this disaster will spread throughout the entire world. They said that humanity in its current state can't prevent it. The Foundation, together with other regions, had formed a plan to evacuate all of humanity into space. The plan was already in motion. My head was spinning at the outrageous tale. So what would become of Pokemon? When I put the question to them, they described their Pokemon conservation project and asked for my help. All roads lead to Rome, baby. Stories intertwining even more. But another key detail is that all of our other regions are involved. This could even include regions we have not visited yet in the games, as there is no solid number given. Further than this is that humanity cannot prevent this, which is ridiculous. We have teamed up with Rayquaza and Mega Evolved it in Hoenn twice. We have conquered Area Zero. We've witnessed Cyrus capture the Lake Guardians and only be stopped by humanity or Giratina after capturing gods of time and space. We have sealed the Reggies, created Mewtwo, built altars in worship of Lugia and Ho-Oh, gained new heroes of Unova, revived and defeated Ultra Necrozma, and even quelled a beast from beyond the stars in the form of Eternamex, and even Mega Evolved Zygarde, god of the ecosystem, yet somehow we can't stop this. All of our achievements are meaningless in the eyes of fate itself, meaning that whatever this is has a few things going on. Either it is a Pokemon we don't understand yet or don't know, maybe it's a worsening natural event, or it is something that needs to happen. I will claim it is a Pokemon we don't know and something that has to happen to the world. Something that Pokemon has warned us about before with Lysander, that the world will reach its breaking point and a mass casualty will happen naturally. The plants will no longer support us and everyone will suffer for it, all living things. And while his actions were wrong, once again he was right in his assumptions. The only difference though is that this is the world of Pokemon. For every concept that exists, there is a Pokemon that governs it. Life, death, space, time, antimatter, you name it, it's there. And now we have an unknown being that will reset the world in an instant, rather than allow a gradual age of changes. But again, we see no Zygarde, who had appeared when Ultra Beasts arrived in Alola, had appeared when the ultimate weapon fired in X and Y, when Anj was building up within ZA, and if you take the manga for fact, then it also appeared when AZ first built it. Yet despite all this, and knowing it is a worldwide creature, it isn't mentioned at all when all regions are included in this disaster prepping, meaning that Zygarde is letting this happen. This is a natural phenomenon that was always meant to happen eventually, which would even get rid of the idea that it's stronger than legendary Pokemon or mythical Pokemon we know. It is instead simply a natural part of life that is respected and left alone by them, something we haven't seen within the age of humanity, but have predicted many, many times. I love, though, that the people from the Aether Foundation were polite about it, like, hey, clearly you have incredible technical abilities, and we don't have time to split hairs. You already know so much, so we might as well tell you the rest and have you join our crew to save life on Earth as we know it. It's great. I love it. But the plan was as follows, explained in Confession 5. While humanity is evacuated into space, all of the Pokemon in the world are to be stored and protected in a massive computer system. That is the Pokemon Conservation Project, an incredible plan. But the Foundation members said that in order to avoid panic, they had to keep both the disaster and the project out of the public eye as much as possible. Naturally, this left them short-handed. Skilled computer technicians were in particularly high demand. That's why the Foundation sought me out after I discovered the disaster. Recruitment. I took them up on their offer. Till this point, I'd always lived as I pleased, but if I could save Pokemon using my skills, I had to do it. The work was tough, but also rewarding. Eventually, the public began to take notice of the disaster. The Foundation gradually evacuated those who noticed to a safe place. But to avoid panic, they waited until the last minute to tell people that their destination was space. In the middle of this unbelievable situation, I found a flaw in the plan. This is continued in Part 6, the final confession of our hacker. In order to escape the disaster, humanity would temporarily take refuge in space, while Pokemon would be safely stored in a computer system. This was the general overview of the plan. But no computer system will keep running forever. The Foundation planned to send a select few members back to the planet at regular intervals to perform ongoing maintenance. But for humanity to survive in space for any length of time, it would take a tremendous amount of energy. I calculated that even a slight deviation from the original plan would result in insufficient energy to return, leaving humankind stranded in space for dozens or even hundreds of years. If that happened, the essential system protecting the Pokemon would eventually cease to function. So I decided to add a little touch of my own to the system's programming. First, it will continuously check the weather data across the globe in search of environments that can prove even slightly habitable to Pokemon. Next, if maintenance is not performed for a long period of time and the system begins to approach its limits, it will release the Pokemon most suited to those environments. Of course, ideally, humans will return someday and live alongside Pokemon once more. But on the off chance humanity never returns from space, I think releasing the Pokemon into a wild world, rather than leaving them asleep in a computer, would be a happier outcome. It may sound strange coming from the program's creator, but I hope it never has to run. And so, this leads us to the release of Professor Tangrowth, Ditto, and Squirtle. Because there is one incredible detail that has had me so bothered by this. How did Tangela, as we will find out later, end the story as a Tangela in the wild, evolve into a Tangrowth, survive the cataclysm, and still know nothing about what's happening? Your first reaction is amnesia, but I refuse to take such a simple answer, especially as it still seems to remember so much else about the world. And while it lived for a long time on its own, it is made very clear that Tangrowth has been stuck in this area specifically for a long time, which we can of course blame on the gates needing a higher skilled trainer to pass through them, but there's more to it. A Tangela will only evolve into Tangrowth when it learns Ancient Power, but this is technically not the only way. Rather, there are multiple ways for many Pokemon to evolve, some through level up, others through events occurring in their lives, and even more through unlocking ancient DNA within their bodies. For example, a Cubone evolves into Marowak, stated through the Pokédex to be when it overcomes the grief of its dead mother. A Onyx becomes a Steelix once it has consumed enough metal and polished its body enough while digging through the ground. There are Caesar that can be found alongside Komodo in the wild, as Scyther uses the metal scales they drop to then evolve, and so many more. I do have an entire video on that if you want more on it. Though the most relevant to this situation, considering ancient power, is Mamoswine, which can be found naturally in the coldest of environments within the wild, such as near Qrem's lair, outside the giant chasm that is so incredibly cold that many Pokemon needing the cold are found there. So, in Tangela's case, all it needs is to live long enough to continue existing and growing, and it is perfectly fine. It grows an incredible number of vines, it does hunt for prey as per the Pokédex, it just needs sunlight and water though, but it apparently needs less water than we would think. The easiest answer is to say that it was captured, but since its preferred environments can be any place with non-polluted water and sunlight, it was released very early on. Although, there may be another explanation we'll get to later regarding it that I believe is a stronger case for this. The literal only other option, though, is that it was in the PC for so long that it evolved within the PC, which would be shocking in a first-time event. I'd like to believe that this is the case, though, but whichever scenario you prefer isn't going to change how we investigate the rest of this story. Because in either scenario, you might believe, we know that centuries have passed, or at least that humanity has not been back to Earth to perform maintenance on this system for an incredibly long time. And to me, it feels as though that this Tangela evolving into Tangrowth truly has lived an incredibly long time to then evolve into this form. And since it has grown such an interest in human activities and technology, its preferred habitat had been automatically attuned to its personality to then release it early, to be a leader, to be a professor for the next souls that will re-enter the wastelands, as one of the few that have a title attached to their name, the few that we will become close friends with, as they are the main characters of our story as it progresses as Pokemon. And of course, the same can be said about Ditto. As we clean up each area we visit, we will rebuild Pokemon centers and uncover bits and pieces of the story from our trainer. And so before we continue with the Professor's journals, I want to talk about Ditto and its burgeoning humanity. The first step is through reading what is noted as someone's journal. Though since it uses our Ditto's name by the second entry, we find out that this is in fact our trainer. The interesting part is that we get these in order of how the game is meant to progress, the first journal being in Withered Wasteland. I just got back from depositing my partner Pokemon in the PC at the Pokemon Center. We spend every day together. Being separated like this is so hard, but I know we'll meet again someday. I'm sure of it. I'll need to evacuate with the others pretty soon, but first I'm planning to go take one last look at all the cities my partner and I visited together. It's hard to explain why, but I feel the need to do this. Entry 2 is found in Bleak Beach, which is once again our Vermillion city. I remember this being a bright, bustling port city way back when I visited with my partner. Now there are always dark clouds looming over the city. Not a single sunbeam slips through. Looks like most of the people who lived here have gone too. The last time we were here, whenever we went near the water, Ditto got so nervous. Maybe because it can't swim. I tried getting it to transform into a water type, but despite its best efforts, we had little success. Guess it's not so easy. After giving it a lot of encouragement, I was shocked when it suddenly transformed into me. It copied every detail of my clothes, my haircuts, only its face still looked like Ditto. Unfortunately, transforming into me didn't really help with the whole not being able to swim issue. This is in fact a plot point that is resolved as we go through these areas, which we may as well talk about the major points in each area. Bleak Beach is exactly as the trainer described. It's dark, gloomy, not a shred of sunlight comes through. Though despite the gloom, we do meet Smearguru, who is simply trying to find its muse in these trying times as it stares out to the SSN. Though nothing of note happens, it's fun to say that the four colors of red, blue, green, and yellow on its body is representative of the first Pokemon games released. Our next major character we meet here is Pikachu, who washes up on the beach, pale and sickly, and in need of help. We eventually come to learn that in the past it had shared so much electricity that it could no longer store it within its body. Its tail, when we look at it, is smaller, which I believe is a visual representation of the electric organ that has atrophied within its body. Atrophied basically meaning that it has been out of use for so long that it no longer functions as intended, though at least in this case, it can store electricity, but it can't generate electricity. With enough help from us, not only can we build a station where it can be filled with electricity to feel normal, but there are future requests where you can reunite it with its family of Pichu. It's our interactions with Pikachu that we begin to fulfill the needs of this zone, which is to bring light back to Vermillion City, a place that a mouth in this area states was once a bright and cheery place even on the darkest of days. Though as we begin this process, we're led to a loud rumbling in the area, uncovering a cave to find Moslax sleeping inside, a Pokemon that will only wake up once we have actually brought enough light into this area for the flowers to open up. Something strange definitely is happening here, as the moss has definitely become symbiotic with Snorlax, and somehow it either was never captured into the system, or it was released early on in this area like Tangrowth. Either way, it had realized there wasn't enough food for it and fell asleep, somehow retained its massive size, likely due to the moss to some capacity, and of course, as per usual, it remembers nothing. As we continue forward and bring more light to the area, we are given a surprise visit upon the parting of clouds as lightning blasts down on the hill behind Moslax, revealing Raikou to be here. Raikou is one of the legendary or mythical Pokemon that we will find in each section, marking potential culprits that we will come across in the final chapter to said section. And while I don't mention it, there is one culprit that we do encounter within the Withered Wasteland, their first area, that could have been a culprit of disaster, but we'll get to that in a moment. We'll catch up to all the legendaries and mythicals I skipped over. With Raikou, it arrived because it thought that all the humans had finally come back. It has no idea where all the humans went, but acknowledges that humans can't live without sunlight, and due to all the natural disasters, believes that they ran off somewhere. Unfortunately, by the time that it realized there were clouds all over the place blocking the sunlight, they were all already gone, and Raikou just left things as is. We're told literally nothing else from Raikou, who could have been a major culprit of some of the disasters due to its connection with storms. I even thought that the legendary birds would have been a part of this, but nope. We can encounter them, and they all say nothing of the cataclysm, though where we find their altars is very interesting. One section you can visit is Pallet Town, stated directly to us with no hiding of it whatsoever. We get Eevee as the first Pokemon we meet to represent it as a partner Pokemon in the main games, and can find altars of Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, building them all to summon them to these lands. Those temples are massive, and it took me an incredibly long time to even manage to do that on my own. But Zapdos in particular has its altar based on the power plant, but Articuno has its based on a place where it states it lived in a very long time ago, which would be the Seafoam Islands, or even one of the mountains. Places that have likely fallen completely to ruin or partially to ruin, or, in the case of the Seafoam Islands, have been flooded over since the start of the disasters. Also, this could be yet another reference to Mystery Dungeon. Now, this does, though, lead me to the legendary that does appear within the Withered Wasteland once we go through an entire debacle of getting it to rain in the area, with it being noted that the place has not seen rain in so very long. And once we do get it to rain, we hear the great bellow of a massive Pokemon, another major potential culprit of the disaster, Kyogre. And what's wild, other than the southern accent, is that it openly states it has no idea what happened once the disasters began. Instead of being a part of everything, it went down to the bottom of the ocean and took an incredibly long nap. This nap was so long that it actually forgot to come back up, and as such, the lands went without rain all this time. Thank you, whale, that forgot we need rain on the surface, but this does tell us something incredibly important indirectly. Not only is Kyogre not the cause of this, but neither is Groudon, because we know for a fact that if Groudon had started messing with the balance of earth and water, Kyogre would be waking up to throw hands, and then of course Rayquaza would be arriving to slap them both upside the back of their heads. Yet Kyogre is chill, unassuming, and overall just doesn't know anything about anything all over again. I will also note something incredibly important is that in lore, Kyogre and Groudon are evenly matched. their battle will go on until something or someone stops them, meaning that once again, I guarantee Groudon, Kyogre, Rayquaza are not involved in the creation of this disaster. It seems as though, just as I theorized earlier, that the legendary and soon mythical Pokemon just kind of went away instinctively. They just accepted the disasters for what they were and dipped for a while, as though they've been through this before and it's just another day to them. I'll also note that we do get to see Ho-Oh flying all over the place and dropping feathers like fiery poops, and I will admit that I have not talked to Ho-Oh yet. Though, these feathers would likely symbolize the idea of reviving the lands long term. There's also a reason why I haven't talked to Ho-Oh yet, which is, once again, even the most important of Pokemon have yielded little to no information other than removing themselves from incrimination. In antithesis to this, in the Bleak Beach, we can run into Lugia flying around for the first time, yet another potential culprit, and I'm going to squash this twofold. 1. It is not causing any storms just by flying around despite Pokedex entries, and 2. I got to meet Lugia. After getting all the legendary birds together and making its spell, you can call it down, and it talks all about how it enjoys solitude, and long ago, it scared some Pokemon by creating a few storms. Since that event, it has been careful as to not cause any big storms whatsoever, as it feels bad for those smaller events. It's a little cute. So at least that's another Pokemon no longer on our list of potential culprits. It also says that we should talk to Ho-Oh because Ho-Oh is very talkative. Now, there is one very special mythical Pokemon in this area within the Withered Wasteland, but now that we're caught up to what important Pokemon I skipped over, I'm going to say we're going to come back to that at the very end. Let's actually move on to Trainer Journal number 3, found within the Rocky Ridges. A long time ago, this city was packed with people working in the nearby mines. Apparently, it was a pretty lively place. At least that's what I heard from the chef at the little restaurant I visited with Ditto. There's no sign of the restaurant anymore, but I guess it's not surprising, given those vicious volcanic eruptions. Who could live in a place like this now? The food we had at that restaurant was incredibly delicious. The whole time the chef was cooking, Ditto was watching intently. It's always been so full of curiosity. I've noticed it seems particularly interested in the things humans do. I wish we could have traveled together more. There are so many things I wanted to show it. God, it just rips my heart out every time. This feeling of longing, of regret, despite the circumstances outside of one's own control. It's such beautiful writing as someone who does love how bleak and bittersweet writing can be. And if you put this into any other story, it would hit incredibly hard, especially since they know we have the nostalgia factor as a part of all this. Though once again, this is, as the trainer described it, a land that has been ravaged by volcanoes, as evidenced by an incredible amount of black volcanic ash that has completely settled in the lands. This is an incredibly important detail because with tons of volcanoes erupting, it could blot out the sky for years upon years, decades even, leaving us in an age of darkness, as that is what happened during the final mass extinction of the dinosaurs, or part of what happened to them in their final horrific moments. The largest key that tells us this is actually Pewter City is in fact the museum that we find here. A lone Gimmighoul residing within it, as the only way to even reach it in the first place is by going over the Ashen Mountains or diving under the earth and through the mines filled with lava. Which brings me to another point. There are mines here and scaffolding in other areas that tell us stories of humanity trying to gather resources, that they are trying to survive, and that there were excavations that had occurred long ago to uncover truths of the world, likely in hopes of a last chance to find the source of this event. Which, now that I think about it, we may as well call it what it would have been if we called it in the real world. A mass extinction event just like any other. In this museum, we find displays, a recording studio, and my favorite of all, a space room filled with planets akin to the ones in our real world, a space shuttle, and an astronaut suit. It feels like a bittersweet love letter as you find out the story of this game, and it will hit even harder later on. More than this though, it is suspected that due to the mountainous area, the mines, and the museum, this might actually be Mount Moon, and the routes before it, now combined with Pewter City. They weren't all that far from each other to begin with, but it would match up pretty well with what we know map-wise. Here, we will first uncover the partner Pokemon to that chef we visited with our trainer, free said chef, and run into what is aptly called Chef Dente, a Greedent and yet another Pokemon that has gained a great interest in their trainer's activities. We only learn more of Chef Dente through completing her storyline and uncovering the chef's diary, which, with the way that Dente talks, she has that southern accent, so even though she's, in the, European-inspired region, we're gonna use a southern accent for her. March 13th, Charlotte appears to be interested in cooking. I tried teaching her a bit, and she's really quite good at it. She's very dexterous with those little Greedent hands, and it took almost no time before she was able to help me with some simple tasks. June 27th, Charlotte's an eager eater, but the one food she doesn't like is chesto berries. She made a rather strained expression when I fed her some. A chef shouldn't be picky about things like that, but I'd feel bad forcing her to eat something she doesn't like. What to do? July 3rd, I made a special soup just for Charlotte using chesto berries as a secret ingredient. She seemed to really like it, and she appeared very satisfied as she finished off the whole pot. I wonder how shocked she'd be if she knew it had chesto berries. I look forward to the day when she figures it out. We capped this story by actually helping her create the dish she had longed to recreate, being surprised but happy all the same about the bitter item being added to her cooking repertoire. The semi-final major soul we run into in this area is stereo speaker DJ Rotom, simply a little guy that has taken over a stereo and has been dormant inside of a hidden room within a cave. It likely was given this form due to the importance of CDs being revived and people not wanting to lug around boom boxes on their shoulders. Modern problems require modern solutions, and music keeps morale up, especially when you have a very excited, human language speaking Rotom that can keep your spirits high as you toil through the mines for the sake of humans and Pokemon of the world. It's also a sound type, and you bet your sweet Bippy I plan to make a video about sound types because of this. But through the help of Professor Tangrowth helping figure out the idea of a party, Charlotte, aka Chef Dente, bringing the cooking together, which we do learn how to do and get power-ups through, and DJ Rotom's jams, we awaken the mythical Pokemon of this section, Volcanion. Yes! Not Heatran, not Groudon, not even Raikou, who you find randomly on an island. No, actually rather in an island, but no. You see the volcano begin to release lava. Volcanion perches itself atop the rocks in the middle of a lava flow, and you approach it. The only reason it appeared is because of all the noise we made, as it noticed we're having a good time even without the humans to help. It openly states it enjoyed the peace and quiet without humans, but doesn't mind the noise here and there. Again, it knows nothing about what happened and blames humans, even though it states it has no idea how the world's turned this way, and it's just biased against humans, which, thank God, it states that it is actively against humans and is blaming them without evidence, because otherwise I'd be having a bit of a headache, especially against people who did not play the game and are just reading the cliff notes from other people. And especially as we see so much evidence of humanity trying to fix the problem and save Pokemon. It does reassure us that there are plenty of good humans out there too, and they're tough, so they must have survived somewhere out there. Otherwise, that's all this section holds, and we can move on to our next record and location. The final words within the final journal is found in what is called the Sparkling Skylands, a place so high up on these strange crystals that it breaks through the clouds. The city was a dazzling metropolis the last time I came here with Ditto. Now it's barely recognizable. Apparently the ground in this area has been rising up so quickly that it's caused many of the buildings to collapse and the roads to crack. Some scientists believe that if things continue at this pace, in a matter of centuries, this area will be as high as a mountain in terms of elevation. It looks like most of the people who once lived here have evacuated already. I suppose I should go too. It breaks my heart to leave Ditto behind, but it's not forever. No matter what, I'll come back someday, and then Ditto and I will travel the world. This is the final nail in the coffin. It has been centuries since humanity has left the planet behind. And with what we know from the hacker's confessions, humanity is stuck in space, drifting somewhere in the stars, unable to return back to the planet. A world devoid of humans, left behind, but slowly beginning to come back to life and even thrive with our help. But this is nowhere near the end, and there may be a special twist to this. Though this place is Saffron City through and through. There are maybe some who think this is Celadon due to the tall building, but we rebuilt it to find that this is in fact Silphco. Not only this, but we can visit the dojo and even Sabrina's gym, which once again has the Team Rocket hideout underneath it. Here, we run into many Pokemon that seem to have aligned themselves closely with humans, are very humanoid in their appearance, or both. A Conkeldurr, who helps us make cement, as it taught humanity how to do so long ago. A Gardevoir, who was known to, in lore, act as a guardian angel for the humans that Gardevoirs typically care for. The Poliwrath of the dojo, a Dragonite, who would be known, in Pokédex entries, to protect humans out at sea. And my favorite of them all, the Tink Master. Thanks to humanity doing everything they could to compact all their waste, we have tons of metallic junk lying all over this city alongside lifts that can carry you from one island to another. All while the Tink Master takes advantage of all these resources alongside her trusty multi-tool hammer to plan, blueprint, and create new architectural designs, which is of course how we managed to rebuild Silphco. Though before we get into that big moment, I want to talk about the other elephant in the room. These blocks that have lifted everything up into the sky above clouds. These things that are called mysterious stones and look eerily like the same type of iridescent crystal we'd see in Area 0 with Terapagos. They are even said to have a mysterious energy within them, and even though we don't run into any Terra Pokemon within the area, it's hard to ignore the Tinkaton that was revealed in Paldea, which Terapagos was also revealed within. We don't see Terapagos at all currently in the game, but as one of the Pokemon we see who would act as a source of major energy, maybe it's a sign of something. Maybe just as Anj would attract Pokemon to Lumiose as they wanted more energy, maybe Terapagos and many others serve to restore the balance of energy within the world, which is actually a pretty common thing within Pokemon. Whether we look at Dynamaxing, Mega Energy, Aura Powers, Basic Life Energy, Terastallization, the Z Power that created Totem Pokemon, and everything in between and without, Pokemon are attracted to and absorb natural energy from each other and the planet itself. So as a way to restore the planet, maybe sources of these phenomena are absolutely necessary to give back to the planet itself and restore that balance so that way it can be taken back in the future, creating an energy cycle. Moving on from this idea, the last major Pokemon of this section is in fact a Pokemon that appears when a massive rift appears above Silphco, a rift that looks eerily like the space-time rifts we would see in Legends Arceus, the very same that would be created by Giratina. Yet as we reach the top of this newly restored tower, we see a Master Ball before us. Within it is one of the only Pokemon we visibly see escape a Pokeball other than ourself at the beginning of the story, as Mewtwo bursts forth before us. It expresses its concern over the construction of this Silphco building potentially being due to humans using the power of their so-called science in unwise ways again. Of course, referencing Silphco's creation of not only Porygon, but its involvement in Mewtwo's creation under the hand of Giovanni. It tells us it has no idea what happened to humans, but that the last time it saw one was in a place where rain no longer fell, directly saying that it was Fuchsia, the starting point to our whole journey. They were putting up a peculiar building on a nearby beach. So then that brings us back to Strange Team Rocket's lighthouse. But before we get there and explain everything related to that, let's finish out the last of our Professor and Poke Life entries that will bring us back to the end of their story and the beginning of Team Rocket's. Professor's Diary number 5. Something shocking has happened. The Pokemon Conservation Project is progressing smoothly, and the time came for my Tangela to join the others. In the hopes of avoiding a tearful scene, I waited until my grandchild was asleep before entrusting Tangela to one of the other project members. Then later that night, I received word that Tangela had run off. Tangela was like family. He should have been accustomed to humans. How could this have happened? I have a theory. Tangela was likely trying to get back to our home, but it's nearly time for my family to set off for space. Even if Tangela were to make it safely home, by the time he arrives, we'll no longer be there. I feel agonizingly helpless, knowing there's nothing I can do. Nothing, that is, but hope that the project staff find Tangela and keep him safe. To follow, we have the Professor's final entry. The day of departure finally arrived, and Tangela was still nowhere to be found. So I decided to join the survey team after all. It will give me the opportunity to return to the planet periodically, and I can search when I'm there. If there are any strange machines or rare tools on the ship, I should borrow them. Then I'll find Tangela and show them to him. I'm certain he'll examine them with his usual curiosity. Until then, please, be safe. From what we can try to understand, Tangela still survived and was found, but by who is the question? Because again, while it still has the same amnesia as others, it was confirmed to have evolved but also survived the disasters, if it lived through those disasters. My theory on who will come as a small shock, but will be justified later, as if it wasn't anyone from the research team who did not report it in, then I believe a Team Rocket grunt may have saved Tangela without ever saying it. We have 3 more PokeLife dev entries which lead us back to understanding how it was developed and how our use of it in the games came to be. PokeLife Dev Diary number 3. Had a truly surprising experience today. Someone from an influential foundation in another region visited us and offered to back our efforts here. This foundation is dedicated to Pokemon care and conservation, and they have promised to provide us with everything we need. I cannot think of a more perfect collaborator to join our cause. With their support, I may finally be able to realize the dream I've had for ages. My dream? To foster a society in which the majority of people, not only my team, are interested and invested in creating comfortable environments for Pokemon and humans to live in. That goal always seemed far too lofty and out of reach, but I believe it has now entered the realm of possibility with the strong support the Foundation has promised us. And as we read the next entry, number 4, we will find that this did spread further. That despite our own society and world, our doubts, negativity, and cynicism, humanity really did band together from all walks of life. Or at least they tried to. We have developed an app that will allow all members of our society to participate in creating a comfortable environment for Pokemon and humans. The budget and staff required to accomplish this feat were provided by the Foundation, and the app can be accessed by anyone via Pokemon Center PC. Participants can start with easy tasks, such as watering dry ground or planting the seeds of various plants, anything that will please nearby Pokemon. The app will reward the participant with virtual coins, which can in turn be exchanged for a variety of prizes. This was my first time developing an app, and it was quite the challenge. However, with the help of many talented collaborators, we finally succeeded. The name of the app is PokeLife. This app was so user-friendly that even children could use it. They could grow up learning how to help the planet and its Pokemon, because there is no reason to read any of the words when using the app. You just need to see the pictures. Sure, you might need to know the value of coins, but if you want it and can't get it, when you click it, you wait until you have more coins and try again. This would establish generations of deep love, care, and reward for keeping the planet healthy and helping it flourish. But unfortunately, things fell apart as we learn in the final entry. In a most unfortunate turn of events, PokeLife never received a chance to be put to use. The drastic deterioration of the global environment continues, and the plan to evacuate all of humanity into space has finally been put into action. Efforts have begun to gather as many Pokemon as possible from all over the world and send them into the Pokemon Center system for safekeeping. I was unable to make my dream a reality, but there is at least one silver lining in all of this. Even after we humans leave this planet, the Pokemon Center system will remain active in order to keep all of the Pokemon inside safe. The system will also keep a record of environmental data around each Pokemon Center. The framework we developed for PokeLife will be used for this. The recorded data will be analyzed by research teams set to return from space at regular intervals. They say this is how we will determine when it's safe for all of humanity to return to the planet together. My time here is short. I must soon go to space myself. My new dream will be of the day when humans and Pokemon can once again live together on this planet. And so we truly are back to the very beginning. The moments in which Pokemon who can survive in the harsh climates were released. Pokemon that weren't legendary or mythical, but rather Pokemon that took on traits of humanity the most. Ditto, Professor Tangrowth, Chef Dente, DJ Rotom, Tink Master, and so many others whose habitats were analyzed to be a world where humans would be able to turn things around and thrive, all because these Pokemon were so close to humanity that they could persevere. But our story still is not done yet, because there's one last string of events, one last storyline that I've saved until the very end. The tale of an organization that turned a new leaf, at least partially, as even Team Rocket served to help save humanity in their darkest hour. The complete Team Rocket Grunts journal entry collection starts with a goofy kick, and I'm just going to use my regular voice for it because it's such a long entry. I've decided to give this social media thing a whirl. Today's my first go at it. Why? To bring in new recruits for our organization. We may not be the heroes of the story as far as most people out there are concerned. To be completely honest, we're kind of the villains. But if you forget about all the rules and common sense and stuff, we live how we want to live. And I think that makes us a pretty fun organization. Since we don't have the best reputation, I can't really give out our name, but it's kind of hard to talk about it without a name, so let's go with Team R. Got it? So anyway, give me a yell if you're interested in being a member of Team R. Team R is building a top secret warehouse. I went to help out a bit today and got covered in sand. Kind of sucked. A bunch of smart-looking people were there too, like scientists and engineers and all that. Kind of freaked me out. But it's pretty cool that our boss has so many different people on call like that. Team R was actually really infamous in Kanto back in the day, but our boss at the time disbanded the whole organization. Our new boss restarted things, and now we're back. I really respect our current boss. We're all baddies and villains, but he totally gets us. I'm gonna be his loyal underling forever. Now, this second entry tells us of Giovanni's departure, but it doesn't talk about Archer's rise to try and bring back Giovanni. Maybe because Archer never considered himself a boss, since he and the rest of Team Rocket at that time were trying to bring Giovanni back. Who this new boss could be is hard to say. The only one who it could possibly be that we would be aware of without just giving us a new character altogether may just be Corbeau, someone who Giovanni had mentored as we learned from the Mega Dimension DLC. Though I do doubt this is the case, but of anyone, it would make the most sense to be him. Especially as Silver, Giovanni's son, would want nothing to do with the organization. All while Corbeau could use the grunts to his advantage, as they're much like his own grunts within the Rust Syndicate. Moving on to Journal 3. One good thing and one bad thing happened to me today. The good thing was that I got assigned to a special mission by the boss. Our boss really knows how to pick people for special missions. If I can do well on this, I'll climb the ranks to exec in no time. Maybe. The bad thing is that the mission itself seems really hard and kinda annoying. It wants me to gather all kinds of things. In a time like this? Food, furniture, what else? Anyway, just lots of stuff. I'm just a little grunt and don't have any underlings of my own, so it's a big ask. I'm just trying to figure out the absolute easiest, low-energy way to complete this mission. As we continue through the next two entries, we learn how this grunt solved their little predicaments. Let me tell you all about what happened while I was looking for leopard berries to try and complete this mission for the boss. There's been a bunch of extreme weather or whatever recently that's killing off all the trees, but I finally found a tree that still had berries on it. But as soon as I started shaking the tree to get the berries off, some super serious looking lady came up and started yelling at me. She was like, "Those are not for you. They're for Pokemon. There are already far too few berries, blah, blah, blah." She was so annoying, but something else she said was actually kind of interesting. Apparently, she's making an app or something to get a bunch of people to work together and create a comfortable environment for Pokemon to live in. Basically, if you do good stuff for the environment, the app will reward you with cool prizes. In other words, she's gonna bribe people to work for her by promising them cool stuff. Not a bad idea. And that gave me a great idea. I bet I can complete that mission the boss gave me by doing kind of the same thing. Instantly, we recognize this interaction to be between the developer of PokéLife and our grunt. Once again, not only showing the weaving storylines, but also that whoever this leader is already knows about PokéLife and the importance of telling the grunt to do this work. But there's an ulterior motive we'll learn about at the very end. Entry 5. So I went ahead and got some prizes ready. I went with gym badges. People are crazy about those things, you know? These are fake ones though. Now I just gotta get some nice little Pokemon trainers to come work for free. But that's kinda got me stumped. All the trainers I try to talk to in town just look at me like I'm suspicious and ignore everything I say. I don't know if my handiwork was no good, or if I just have a face that only a mother could trust, but I gotta say that this whole thing's got me feeling kinda down. I even had to report to the boss and tell him the mission wasn't going well. I just didn't have a choice. But the boss didn't get mad. He just gave me a pep talk and even let me in on some ultra top secret intel about our warehouse. The secret of Team R's warehouse. Of course, I can't spill all the beans, but I can spill some of them. You've probably heard the rumors about having all the humans evacuated into outer space. Well, our boss tells me that the rumors are true, but apparently they don't want Team R doing bad stuff in outer space, so they're gonna split us up and send us all to different areas. Not cool, people. I can't be the only one who thinks that's not cool, but our boss has us covered. Turns out that warehouse is actually Team R's secret weapon for getting us into outer space together. I cried happy tears. Our boss rules. How are we gonna get to outer space on our own, you ask? Well, I can't tell you that. Where is this base? Well, it has to be this lighthouse now that we've learned so much, and we also do learn for sure later on, but it leaves us questioning how a person can fit in there, let alone the rest of Team Rocket. But just a little bit longer until we get these answers, as we technically only have 2 entries left. Entry 7. Hearing about the boss's dream of keeping Team R together even in outer space really got me motivated. I'm gonna give my mission one more serious go. Did a little work on the the warehouse to trick people walking by into wanting to help out with my mission. It was a lot of work, but I just had to keep in mind that I was working hard in the moment so I could take it easy later. Not a bad way to do things, I think. The engineers all looked kinda annoyed with me, but they did lend me a hand. Now all I gotta do is wait for some goody-goody to come along and do my mission for me. I'm gonna go ahead and report to the boss what I've accomplished. I bet he'll be so proud. That goody-goody person is in fact us. The Ditto of the story that is suckered into getting this grunt all the supplies needed to fulfill the mission, as we are given fake badges in return, all with actually pretty funny and made-up abilities like never burning our food when we have Cinnabar's badge, for example. Unfortunately, we have a cold stop in Journal 8. Account suspended due to policy violations. The owner of this account was found to belong to the criminal organization calling themselves Team R, which has been causing trouble across the region. The entire organization, including its boss, has been apprehended by the international police. We hope that this news will allow our users to continue using our platform with peace of mind. Which I don't think this was done just to stop them. I strongly believe this was done as part of the Aether organization's whole goal of keeping this as secret as possible. After all, if it is found out that Team Rocket is the one that is spreading information regarding humanity going to space and saying it's true, but the international police comes in and it's like, hey, Team Rocket was the one to do this, don't worry about what they're saying, then people are gonna believe the international police and say, oh, clearly it was all a lie, we're gonna be fine, we're not going to space, we're not getting separated from our Pokemon. Well, that's a little too convenient, isn't it? So then, if everyone has been apprehended as we move forward, how are we talking to the person through the speaker this entire time? Well, after we give everything we are meant to give, receive the badges, and make it to the last step of the Team Rocket initiation, we are given one final heartbreaking task, which when we pair this with what I just said, that Team Rocket was still sent to space, they either have a transponder coming down to Earth, or this is all a recorded message at the end of the day. Your last task is to take a photo. You just need to take one photo and bring it here, but not just any photo. Imagine you had to leave all your friends and move somewhere really far away. Take the kind of photo you'd want to bring with you when you go. Maybe it's your favorite scenery or your closest friends. You could be in the photo yourself if you want. Anyway, bring just one photo like that. This is your final mission. This is our final heartbreaking task, and I cannot describe just how disastrously beautiful those few lines are. That in any other series, they could hit just as hard. And in fact, Pokopia stresses from the very beginning of the game that you should take your time to play through at your own pace. And it's all so that way you can make all these memories, leaving you with so many pictures, so many memories, but then one final choice to try and encapsulate an entire life into one photo. Such an unfair aspect of life as you age, as you leave to new homes and say goodbye to friends and family, as you lose loved ones as they pass away. Yet somehow you have to sit and encapsulate a life into a single photo, something truly impossible, yet the people of this world had to do as they left their partner Pokemon behind, as they left their homes, and maybe even lost each other, as they are separated into separate colonies within space. You get one photo. You take the photo, drop it off, have to celebrate with party poppers, which we do alongside Professor Tangrowth, the first person we meet in this story, and the last person we share our final story beat with. And as we do, the lighthouse is revealed to be a literal space rocket that now blasts off into the heavens without us, but with every supply that you have given it. Now, as this rocket hurtles through space, through our solar system and beyond, taking damage but surviving anyway, being resilient and aiming towards its destination, I will read to you the very last journal entry from Team Rocket, personally written by this goofy little grunt that we find within the base through the sand underneath this rocket, or its location that made it look like a lighthouse. Noted as Grunt's Journal Brainstorming. Assuming someone actually does complete my mission for me by getting food and furniture and all that stockpiled up, what should I do if they actually want to join our organization? I don't know if any super serious do-gooders would want to join Team R, but if they do ask to join, I guess we could let them. Might not be so bad. I bet everybody'd be real surprised if they found out Team R built a rocket to evacuate into outer space all by ourselves. We even have more than enough fuel to make it back to the planet easily after the environment's calmed down a bit. The boss's plan is absolutely perfect. The boss says that the scale of the plan to get all humans into outer space at once is just too large. He said that if anything goes seriously wrong, the others might not have enough fuel to get back. Maybe we could share some of our extra fuel with them if that happens. Then maybe people would think, oh, Team R is actually so nice, and we'd get more people wanting to join up. Either way, I bet we can make a bunch of money from it all when the time comes. And we watch as the rocket slows before a pod in space, a Ditto plush sitting in their window, and an astronaut wearing the same suit as we find in the museum pops out and looks inside the rocket. They seem surprised for a moment, and the game ends. But inside, they will find a Game Boy of their childhood, a fridge that kept all the food we gave safe, new crops and foods that have revived onto the planet, comfortable furniture made from Pokemon that they no longer have with them in space, the knowledge that this was fueled on the planet, materials of paper, rocks, metals, rare minerals, and so much more. These are more than just the signs of life. These are signs of intelligence, of comfort, of the home that has been lost long ago as humanity was unable to return. And the best part is that it is directly stated that this small rocket holds enough fuel to not only get there, but to share some fuel to bring some humans back home. Because not only does one of those initiations stress that it needs a ton of fuel, there's one more Pokemon I want to talk about today as we reach the end. Deep under Fuchsia, we find a wall of unknown. And as we hunt through the wasteland for treasure, we find relics and goodies galore. We will come across mysterious lakes that bear unknown on one side and Mew on the other. The unknown have always been known to grant reality-changing effects to the world, long suspected to be the code of the universe itself, thanks to their relation to Arceus. But in this instance, as we place block after block, slate after slate into the mural, we uncover a mural of Mew. A small portal opens up, and Mew comes out. It is full of energy, talking about how even it has slept for so long, how it recognizes that we called it here. It checks with us to be sure the sun is shining, and now it's ready to see the world and make friends, how we're gonna be best friends, and we have to show them how things have changed. This Mew was meant to serve as the last bastion of Pokemon. It was sealed away by the unknown and would only be released when the time was right. For if all dies, then the ancestor of all Pokemon would jumpstart Earth's ecosystem once more. But it didn't need to, and instead I bring you our closer for this grand endeavor. At least until I assume DLC comes out when we'll be back again. As we talk to Mew over and over, you are bound to get one piece of dialogue that just made me smile. Did you know? I can peek into your future. I mean, kind of. And when I read yours, I see you chilling with your best bud, and you're both laughing your faces off. Our best friend? There's only one person that can fit that description. The one that we take the form of. The one that has a Ditto plush sitting in their pod. The one that's all grown up and was there to receive the rocket that had arrived. Our trainer. How they have aged but not passed away to lead open a new generation is something we have no answers to currently and could theorize until our brains melt. Maybe it really was a space-time distortion that Mewtwo came from, and maybe some sort of space-time wumbo-jumbo happened as they went through space, but I have one final claim to all of this. Pokopia is the bridge, the prequel even to Generation 10, a number that would symbolize completeness, perfection, and harmony. It would signify a full, orderly cycle, and in this case, it would represent renewal, life, and death. The circle of existence itself, the purpose of this entire game. Generation 10 will have a mechanic centered around this, I guarantee it, and I am sure that it will be a revival mechanic. I can feel it in my very soul. This generation will be the aftermath of what happened in Pokopia, small groups of humanity coming back to the planet as they see a brand new world before them. The world of Pokemon renewed for brand new adventures, new history, and ideas that would be more cohesive than when everything first started with the first generation. A soft reboot of everything without losing any of the Pokemon that we know and love. But now that the cataclysm is over, it will be up to us to discover what Pokemon was at the center of it. The currently unknown legendary third Pokemon that governs over whatever legendaries will represent winds and waves. That is truly all for today though, and I thoroughly hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Usually when I make videos like this that I really love, I do tear up a little bit because there's just an excitement to it. I get like happy tears, and I've been so beyond excited for Pokopia's lore and to make this video ever since the first day I streamed it, which was a 7-hour straight stream just enjoying the game. If you're new and made it to the end, subscribe for more. I make deep dives like this every single week, if not more often, with weeks, if not months worth of quality content to enjoy. Let me know your favorite moments from Pokopia, any theories supported by evidence that you may have, and do please like and hype the video as it massively helps the reach and tells me you want more content like this. Also, comments do help the reach as well. Lastly, thank you to members of the channel who you see on this screen now. If you would like behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive videos, become a member for as little as $3 a month. It goes a long way as I am a solo act on this channel from research through editing and uploading, and it makes a massive difference. And I lied, that was not the last thing. Lastly, the best comment from this past week is from Knit, a longtime friend and supporter of the channel, who let us know in my Keystone Pokemon video that bats in her neck of the woods are incredibly appreciated, especially by anyone who farms. Funnily enough, comparing them to less enraged chihuahuas that she has to rescue from time to time. Up next, I think I'm probably going to make the members exclusive video on animals that were inspired by Pokemon in their naming, and then from there, deep dive on some more of the Mega Dimension Megas that had been released. So until then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't do anything I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I will see you next time.